Private Eliza Warren stood silently in formation as the blazing Carolina sun scorched the drill field at Fort Braddock. Her uniform was spotless, her boots shined to a mirror finish. She looked calm, maybe too calm, while others clenched jaws and puffed chests during inspection. Eliza kept her eyes focused ahead and her breathing steadied out to the other recruits. She didn't seem like she belonged. "She's too soft," murmured Private Daniels on the second day of basic. "Bet she?" cried the first time she held a rifle. The nickname stuck faster than mud on boots. "Too soft." It was whispered behind her back, sometimes said to her face. She didn't argue. She didn't even seem to mind. Eliza just did what she was told with surgical precision. She wasn't the fastest or the loudest, but she never failed a task. When others groaned under the weight of their packs during 12-mile rucks, Eliza kept a steady, silent pace. When asked to volunteer for cleanup, she always stepped forward. Her silence, her stillness, it made people uneasy. Some thought she was weak. Others thought she was playing some long game. But no one, not even the drill sergeants, could figure her out. Her discipline was almost eerie. Her kindness, suspicious. She helped an exhausted bunkmate reassemble her rifle without saying a word. She fixed torn uniforms, lent out protein bars, and wrote quiet letters home every night. Sergeant Mendoza took notice. "That one," he muttered to another instructor. "She's different. Can't decide if it's good or dangerous." One night, after an exhausting endurance test, Eliza's bunkmate Branks noticed something as Eliza wiped sweat from her neck. Her dog tag had come loose and was resting against her collarbone. He SQUINTE. It didn't just say her name in blood. Type. Underneath, engraved in small letters, were the words, "Kia, L.T. Robert Warren, Kandahar." Brinks blinked. "Wait. That's your dad?" he asked hesitantly. Eliza said nothing. She simply tucked the tag back under her shirt and continued folding her uniform. Brinks didn't sleep well that night, not by morning. Word had spread? Warren? "You mean the daughter of Lieutenant Warren? The one who jumped on a grenade in Kandahar? The guy they named a whole airfield after?" Suddenly, the tone shifted. The same voices that mocked her now avoided her. Some out of guilt, others out of fear that she might be something more than she let on. But Eliza didn't change. She still trained quietly, still wrote her letters, still folded her uniform with perfect corners. If she heard the change in tone, she didn't react. If she noticed the awkward silences when she entered a room, she ignored them. Then, during a leadership briefing, one of the junior officers joked, "Watch out for the soft one in Bravo Company. Real gentle flower." General Hellstrom, seated near the front, glanced up from his notes. "Who?" "Private Eliza Warren." "Real sweetheart. Too nice for combat." Hellstrom paused. His eyes narrowed. He didn't laugh. Instead, he made a mental note. "Eliza Warren. Dog tag. Warren." Then he stood and walked out of the room without saying a word. That night, under the flickering light of his office lamp, General Hellstrom pulled her personnel file. He read through her evaluations. Impeccable discipline. 0 infractions. Volunteered. For every hardship. He paused when he read her reason for enlisting. To walk the same ground my father did. To serve, not be served. He stared at the words for a long time. And then, for the first time in a while, he smiled, not because he found something funny, but because he knew something the others didn't yet. They were wrong about her. Very wrong. General Hellstrom sat at his desk long after the others had gone home, Eliza Warren's file still open before him. He wasn't the sentimental type, but something about the precision in her record and the quiet burden she carried made him lean back in his chair and think. He'd served with her father Robert Warren back in Afghanistan. A hard-charging lieutenant, brave to a fault. The kind of man who would have taken a bullet for a stranger. And he did. Robert had been blown apart, saving 3 civilians from a suicide bomber in Kandahar. He'd been posthumously awarded the Silver Star, but more than that, he'd been the kind of soldier who made others stand straighter. And now his daughter was here training, like a ghost in her father's shadow, letting the world assume she was weak. But Hallstrom wasn't buying it anymore. The next day, Hallstrom watched Eliza in person, though she didn't know it. He stood just beyond the obstacle course perimeter fence, arms folded, sunglasses hiding his eyes. She was helping 2 slower. Recruits over the wall, not carrying them, not showing off, just coaching with calm, firm direction. One of the instructors said, "She's always like that. Doesn't yell. Doesn't break protocol. Just does the damn work." Another shrugged. "Still thinks she's too delicate for field command, but she's a good team player." Hallstrom grunted, but said nothing. That afternoon, the company underwent weapons malfunction drills. Each soldier was given a rifle, set up to jam during combat simulation, the objective being to fix the jam and continue the mission. Many recruits panicked when the round stopped firing. Some fumbled. A few failed completely, but not Eliza. When her rifle jammed, she dropped to one knee, checked the bolt, cleared the chamber, slapped the forward assist, and resumed fire without breaking stride. Her kill shots hit 3 silhouettes in the head. Within seconds, the drill sergeant blew the whistle. "Damn near textbook," he muttered. But again, Eliza didn't celebrate. She reloaded, fell back into formation, and waited for the next command. Later that night, in the mess hall, Brinks, who had once mocked her, sat down across from her tray. "You're good," he said awkwardly. Eliza didn't look up. "I practice." "No. I mean, you're really good. Sorry about before. I didn't know about your dad." She finally looked at him. "You still don't." He opened his mouth, then closed it again. She wasn't being rude. She was just stating a fact. After lights out, Brinks was still thinking about her words. Elsewhere on base, General Hallstrom called in a favor. He met with the training director and said, "I want her pulled into the tactical leadership unit. Fast-track assessment. No coddling. Let's see what she really is." The director raised a brow. "She's not even through basic." "She doesn't need it," Hallstrom said. "She's already operating above it." The following morning, Eliza was summoned to the command building. She walked in wearing her standard fatigues, hands behind her back, posture straight. General Hallstrom sat alone behind the desk. "At ease, Warren." She stood silently, waiting. "I've read your file. I've read your father's too." Still, no reaction. He was a hell of a soldier. And from what I've seen, you're more like him than anyone realizes. "I'm not trying to be him," she said softly. "I know. That's why you're here?" He slid a folder across the desk. "Tactical Leadership Unit. First selection test starts next week. You'll be evaluated with 5 others, most of them older, higher ranked. You'll be treated the same, no special treatment." "I don't want special treatment, sir." He leaned forward. "Good, because you're not going to get it. But from now on, no one will be calling you soft." She nodded once. Outside the room, as she walked back across the yard, the sun caught her dog tag again. A gust of wind tugged her collar. Just enough for a passing cadet to read the bottom line. They stopped walking. No one said a word, but for the first time, Eliza Warren felt the silence say something else entirely. Respect. The Tactical Leadership Unit wasn't a promotion, it was a crucible. Designed to strip even the toughest soldiers down to their instincts, it broke egos for sport and chewed up arrogance like gum. Only the sharpest survived it. Eliza Warren arrived with no fanfare, just a single duffel and a fire in her chest. Her new squad looked her over like she was a transfer student showing up in a college class, halfway through the semester. Most were older, some combat seasoned, and all of them were loud. They cracked jokes, boasted about war games, and raised eyebrows when Eliza quietly unpacked her gear without looking at anyone. "She's the general's charity case," someone muttered behind her. "She's the ghost girl with the dog tag." The soft-spoken sniper. Eliza didn't respond. She didn't flinch when paired with the heaviest guy in the room for a full-body carry drill. She just lifted, leaned into her strength, and completed the lap around the compound without dropping him once. That earned a few quiet nods. But respect in the TL you wasn't given for carrying weight. It came from fire, and they were about to find some. 3 days into the program, lightning struck the forested edge of the training range. Within hours, the dry woods ignited. Smoke clouded the air. Winds fanned the flames toward civilian outskirts. The base activated an emergency assist team. TLU members were deployed alongside local fire units. It wasn't a drill. Eliza was assigned to assist in Sector 6 deep into the pine-heavy ridgeline, where visibility dropped to feet and embers floated like glowing ash. When they arrived, chaos had already taken root. Civilians were running. Homes were burning. An elderly man screamed for his wife. Dogs barked from inside locked sheds. A little girl sobbed, unable to find her parents. Eliza's commanding officer panicked. The evac routes blocked. He barked, coughing into his sleeve. "We need to fall back." But Eliza saw something different. She saw patterns in the wind, in the terrain. She saw a possibility. "Sir," she said evenly, "there's a runoff trail behind the old mill. It leads north, uphill, away from the fire line. We can get the families out that way." He shook his head, panicking. "We don't have time to confirm. Orders are fallback." She glanced at the civilians, 10 of them, maybe more, trapped in fear. "I'm going." She didn't wait for permission. She scooped up the girl, grabbed the nearest able-bodied man to help, and took the lead. Her voice, calm but commanding, pierced through the panic like a blade through fog. "This way. Stay low. Cover your mouths. Stay together." She led them up the path as the smoke thickened. Trees fell behind them. Fire crept near. She carried the girl nearly the entire mile until they reached the evacuation trucks. Waiting on the road. No one else from her squad arrived for another 7 minutes. By then, she had directed the fire crew to go back for 3 more people trapped near a tool shed and treated a woman's smoke inhalation with makeshift oxygen from a broken hose valve. When the fire finally cleared and the count was done, Sector 6 had lost 0 civilians. That night, General Hallstrom received a handwritten letter from one of the rescued families. "Private Eliza Warren pulled us from the fire. My daughter was on her back the whole way up. She never stopped moving, never yelled, never panicked. I've never seen courage like that. She's steel and silk. Sincerely, John and Maria Reynolds." Ridge V. Wallstrom pinned the letter on his bulletin board. The next day, during morning drills, one of her loudest critics stood beside her on the track. For the first time, he didn't joke or sneer. He just said, "I was wrong about you." Eliza glanced at him, her face unreadable. "I know," she said softly, then started running. The wildfire incident changed everything. By the time the tactical leadership unit regrouped, word had spread far beyond Fort Braddock. Eliza Warren's name was now spoken with a mixture of awe and disbelief. How had the quietest recruit led the most successful evacuation of the entire operation? How had she kept her head when seasoned leaders had not? General Hallstrom, who already suspected her potential, made a call that surprised even his inner circle. He was submitting Eliza for pre-deployment recon command training. It was a move that typically required years of active service, not weeks. Of standout performance. "Sir," one colonel warned, "you'll be accused of favoritism." Hallstrom just tapped the civilian letter pinned behind him. "Tell that to the family whose daughter she carried out of the fire." When Eliza received the news, she didn't smile. She accepted the orders, nodded once, and resumed training. As if nothing had changed, but others noticed. "She's going to recon?" A burly sergeant scoffed. "That's the deep end. Let's see if Ghost Girl can swim." She didn't reply. She didn't need to. 2 days later, the TLU's final field simulation began. The mission: a night ambush in a simulated foreign village with minimal visibility and scrambled radio support. Each trainee would rotate through squad leadership. They were given a basic objective: secure the area, locate hostiles, extract hostages. Eliza was third in line to lead. As she moved into position, the village erupted with flashbangs and simulated gunfire. Smoke grenades clouded the field. 2 of her teammates went down in the first 30 seconds, one from panic, the other wounded per simulation protocol. Her assigned commander froze. Eliza didn't. She dropped low, surveyed the chaos, and began barking precise, rapid-fire commands. "You 2 flank left. Baker, cover fire. Mitch, grab the wounded. I'll breach right side." She kicked through a plywood door, cleared a room, dragged a hostage mannequin out, then laid cover fire with a paintball rifle, while her squad retreated. In less than 10 minutes, the scenario ended. "Simulation complete," boomed a voice from the tower. "Unit 3 extraction. Successful. 0 hostages lost." The instructors stared at each other. One shook his head. That wasn't just clean. That was command-level instinct. Later that night, Eliza sat outside the barracks alone, cleaning. Her gear beneath the yellow glow of a flickering yard lamp. Her dog tag swung gently from her neck, catching the light with every breath. Footsteps approached. It was Sergeant Keller, the same one who had doubted her hours earlier. He stopped just short of her boot. "You disobeyed your commanding trainee," he said flatly. "That's grounds for failure in most cases." She didn't look up. "And if I hadn't, we would have failed the mission." Keller paused. "You weren't supposed to be in charge tonight." "I didn't ask to be," she replied. He stared at her for a long moment, then pulled something from his pocket. It was a recon training badge, not official, just a patch. "Don't get used to." "Praise," he muttered. "But you earned this." He dropped it in her lap and walked away. She sat there in the stillness, running a thumb across the edge of the patch. Behind her, Brinks and another former skeptic stood in the shadows, watching from the mess hall window. "Did you see what she did in that simulation?" Brinks asked. "She didn't blink," the other said. Brinks shook his head slowly. "She used to be too soft. You remember that?" "Yeah," the other replied. "But now?" "Now they're calling her something else." "What?" "Ghost." "Steel." Out in the yard, Eliza stood slowly and tucked the patch into her chest pocket. She didn't need applause. She had earned her seat at the table. Recon command training was the closest thing the U.S. Army had to psychological warfare against its own soldiers. It wasn't about running the fastest or shooting the straightest. It was about grit in silence, strategy under pressure, and leadership in the face of collapse. Eliza Warren entered the program with her usual quiet demeanor. No speeches, no bravado, just calm eyes and the weight of a dog tag that still bore the name of a man revered across the force. The instructors didn't care. "You're in the deep end now," barked Master Sergeant Dunley on day 1. No safety nets, no reputations, only results. There were 16 trainees. By the end of the second week, 3 had already dropped from stress. One was found crying in the woods during a solo night navigation mission. Another quit after a full day of cold exposure and zero sleep. Eliza didn't blink. She adapted. When the unit hiked 12 miles in full gear, soaked and mud-caked from a river crawl, she didn't slow down once. When they spent a night in a simulated hostage pit complete with loudspeakers blaring static and crying voices, Eliza didn't scream, beg, or speak. She sat cross-legged in the dark, breathing steadily, eyes closed as if meditating. The others noticed. Even those who had once doubted her. "She doesn't react like a normal person," whispered one. "She doesn't react at all," said another. But it was during the rogue scenario that everything changed. In the test, one soldier was secretly designated as a traitor. The rest of the unit had to detect, contain, and neutralize the threat without real weapons, only tactical movement, observation, and limited engagement. The fake traitor was a decorated sniper, tall, fast, brutal in simulations. Everyone expected chaos. They got it. He broke formation during a fake evac drill, staged a data theft, and disappeared into the woods. The team scattered. Panic set in. Orders clashed. Radio traffic went wild. Except for Eliza. She said nothing. Instead, she moved. Alone. No lights, no noise. Just intuition. 30 minutes later, she emerged from the tree line with the traitor disarmed, wrists zip-tied, and a splatter of harmless simulation dye across her shoulder from where he'd grazed her during the takedown. Instructors were speechless. How the hell did she track him without a dog or drone? One whispered. "She didn't track him," said Master Sergeant Dunley, stepping forward. "She predicted him." He turned to the class. Warren did what no one else did. She studied him, understood his habits, his body language, his pattern. She didn't chase. She hunted. Eliza stood in the background, quietly wiping sweat from her brow. Her heartbeat was steady, her breathing calm. That night, her team didn't go drinking like they usually did. Instead, they sat in the training tent, talking about her. "She doesn't lead by shouting," said Brinks. "She leads like a shadow." "I don't think she wants to lead," someone else added, "but she always does." Dunley walked into the tent with a clipboard. He didn't say much, just read from the list. "Next week, 2 will be selected for final field deployment assessment. Specialist Eliza. Warren is one of them." No applause. Just nods. After he left, Brinks approached her cot. "I used to call you too soft," he said awkwardly. She looked up, not unkindly. "I remember. I was wrong." She offered him a quiet smile. "You weren't entirely wrong. I just hadn't been forged yet." And with that, she turned over and closed her eyes. Outside, the wind whispered through the trees, carrying with it a new nickname. One whispered not in mockery, but in awe. Ghost Steel. Asterisk. The ceremony was supposed to be a formality, a recognition event for trainees who had completed advanced command training. The auditorium inside Fort Braddock was polished and filled with high-ranking officers, press photographers, and a few hand-picked civilian guests. The flags were ironed crisp, the medals laid out like trophies. Eliza Warren had never been more out of place. She stood among the graduates in full dress uniform, polished boots planted firmly on the stage's hardwood floor. Her hair was pinned tight beneath her cap, and her signature comb never wavered. But beneath the ribbons and starch, she was thinking about her father. They had told her to prepare a statement, not a speech. Just a few words, anything that would honor the moment. Eliza had drafted something the night before, but she hadn't written it for applause. When her name was called, Specialist Eliza Warren, Fort Braddock, top recon evaluation score. Round of clapping erupted. Several of the very officers who had once dismissed her stood and applauded now. She stepped up to the podium. eyes scanning the room for no one in particular. Then she pulled her dog tag from beneath her collar. It swung gently in the light. She held it up. She began, her voice steady. Carries more than my name and blood type. Underneath it, there's a line not required by regulation. She turned the tag so the crowd could read it. KIA, LT, Robert Warren, Kandahar. There was a pause of thick silence. My father was a soldier. He taught me that strength isn't always volume. Sometimes it's presence. Sometimes it's the way you stand when everything else falls apart. No one moved. No one coughed out, she continued. I've been called soft, quiet, unfit. That never bothered me. What bothered me was the idea that people forgot what quiet strength looks like. My father didn't die loudly. He died saving people. That's the legacy I carry. She nodded once, stepped away from the microphone, and returned to formation. Silence that followed wasn't awkward. It was reverent thought. Then the clapping began again. Slow at first, then building. General Hallstrom was the first to stand. Soon, the entire auditorium followed. When the ceremony ended, reporters approached. One asked, Specialist Warren, do you consider yourself a leader now? She paused. I consider myself a soldier. Later that evening, the photo of Eliza holding up her dog tag went viral on military social media pages. Soldiers around the country shared the image with the caption, Strength etched in silence. Back on base, she returned to her barracks. Without fanfare there, she found a gift box wrapped in simple brown paper on her bunk. No name, no note. Inside was a small metal plate etched with the words, Steel in Silk, Recon Class 1 Honor Graduate. Underneath it, the names of every soldier she had trained with were engraved. All of them. Even the ones who once doubted her. Brink stood in the doorway as she read it. They said you'd break. I did, she said softly. I just welded. The pieces back differently. He grinned. Guess you don't need armor when you are the armor. She gave a slight nod and closed the box gently. That night, she didn't write a letter. She didn't fold her uniform. She just stood by the window, looking out over the quiet field, the stars blinking above like quiet guardians. And across the base, on dozens of bunks and desks, others whispered the same name they had once laughed. And only now, it was said with respect, even admiration. Ghost Steel. 6 months later, Eliza Warren found herself not on a training field or in a classroom, but inside the belly of a roaring military transport bound for the outskirts of a volatile conflict zone. Deployment was never glamorous, and this one came. Fast and emergency response to a rising insurgency in a mountainous border region. Her recon unit was attached to a joint task force. Their orders, infiltration, intelligence, and coordination under live fire threat. The terrain was harsh. Steep, dusty ridges carved into the earth like scars, with winding roads that crumbled under pressure. Villages were caught in the middle, some harboring enemies, others desperately seeking aid. Eliza wasn't a trainee anymore. She wore command stripes now. Her orders were obeyed without question, though her voice remained low and calm. Even among combat-seasoned soldiers, she was known. They didn't call her too soft anymore. They called her Ghost Seal. 4th week of operations. Everything changed. Her unit had been tasked with securing an intelligence asset, a local informant with critical knowledge of an upcoming insurgent strike. They were deep in hostile territory, moving at night with no headlights. The sound of gravel crunching beneath tires the only noise in the darkness. Then the explosion came. An IED, buried beneath the edge of the road, ripped through the lead vehicle. Fire, smoke, and chaos erupted instantly. Radios went down. The lieutenant in command was thrown from the vehicle, unconscious. Screams followed, orders tangled in confusion. Enemy gunfire echoed from the ridges above. Panic clawed at the edges of the squad's nerves, but not Eliza. Wounded, with a piece of shrapnel lodged in her shoulder, she gritted her teeth and pulled herself up. Blood seeped through her uniform, but her eyes were focused. She grabbed the radio. Dead. She looked around. 3 soldiers were down, 1 trapped, 2 missing in the smoke. The rest waited, frozen, eyes wide, waiting for someone to lead. Eliza, what do we do? One gasped. She didn't shout. She didn't hesitate. Form perimeter. Return fire only on visuals. Martin, get the medic kit. Jones, check the ridge for movement. I'll get the lieutenant. She crawled to the burning vehicle, smoke blinding. Her eyes. The lieutenant was pinned beneath the twisted frame. She grunted, braced her good arm, and began dragging him out, inch by inch, ignoring the pain. Bullets zinged nearby. Dust exploded around her boots. By the time she reached cover with the lieutenant, the perimeter was holding. Jones reported 3 hostiles down. Martin stopped Eliza from blacking out, wrapping her shoulder with a field dressing. Don't pass out now. Ghost, he muttered. She didn't. Helicopter blades thundered in the distance 30 minutes later. Extraction. As the medevac landed, the pilot glanced at the scene. Organized defense. Casualties stabilized. Every man accounted for. Who the hell's running this op? He shouted over the rotors. One soldier pointed to Eliza, now propped against a rock, pale but alert. Him? No, the soldier grinned. Her. That's Ghost Steel. The pilot blinked. Wait. You mean the Warren? Eliza gave him. Tired nod, blood staining her collar. Back at base, the incident was debriefed. The lieutenant survived because of her. 3 soldiers owed her their lives. Even the enemy fire had been neutralized with minimal loss. General Hallstrom received the after-action report within the hour. His phone buzzed before he could even finish reading it. It was a message from a colonel. On the ground. Double quotes, sir. Your ghost just walked through hell and brought everyone back. Hallstrom sat back, smiled faintly, and whispered to himself. Told them she wasn't soft. Asterisk. Back at Fort Brannock, the news of Eliza Warren's actions spread like wildfire. She hadn't just survived a leave combat ambush. She'd led an improvised rescue under fire, saved her commanding officer, stabilized 3 wounded soldiers, and held defensive ground until evacuation, all while bleeding from a shoulder injury that would have dropped most people in seconds. Within days, her name was on every commander's lips. Within a week, Washington knew it too. They wanted a ceremony. Eliza didn't. When the official notice came that she'd been awarded the Distinguished Service Cross, she simply nodded. It's for the team, she told Brinks. No, he replied. It's because you are the team. The event was scheduled at the Pentagon, a high-profile presentation with brass from every branch in attendance. General Hallstrom personally requested to deliver the citation. Eliza stood at attention, dressed in full honors, as Hallstrom stepped up to the podium. In every generation, he began, there are soldiers who redefine what strength looks like. Sometimes it's loud. Sometimes it kicks in doors and clears rooms. And sometimes it walks quietly, studies the map, and leads others to safety. He turned to her. She was mocked, doubted, branded as too soft. But when the bullets came, when the fire roared, and when men fell, she rose. Without question, without complaint, with steel in her bones and purpose in her stride. The room rose to its feet as he pinned the medal to her chest. For a moment, Eliza stood frozen, not from nerves, but from this sudden wave of memory. Her father's face, his dog tag, the way he once told her, the world will test your silence. Prove them wrong without a word. After the ceremony, a military journalist approached her for an interview. Specialist Warren, he asked. Do you have a call sign? She hesitated. Not officially. Well, he said, flipping through his notes, I think that's changing. People are calling you something new now. She raised an eyebrow. They're calling you Ghost Steel. She smiled, just slightly. That's not a bad one. Back at Fort Braddock, her old bunk was empty, her things packed. Her orders changed. She'd been reassigned to a special operations planning team. Her leadership, they said, was too valuable to stay local. As she passed through the familiar halls one last time, a group of new recruits walked by. They went silent as she passed. One of them whispered, That's her. Another, braver, asked, Ma'am, is it true you carried 3 soldiers out of an ambush? She stopped, looked at them. Not cold, not harsh, just direct. No, she said. I carried one. The other 2 walked. I just gave them a reason to keep moving. Then she turned and kept walking. That night, Brinks found a small metal plaque screwed into the doorframe of their old barracks. It read, In honor of Specialist Eliza Warren, Ghost Steel, the quietest voice, the strongest presence. He smiled to himself, hands in his pockets. The same girl they once mocked for folding uniforms perfectly and writing quiet letters had become a legend, but Eliza didn't want legend. She wanted legacy. She kept her father's dog tag next to hers, worn thin from years of sweat and fire. The words Kia, L.T., Robert Warren, Kandahar, still etched clearly beneath her name. She didn't wear it for honor. She wore it as a compass. A reminder that quiet doesn't mean weak, that presence matters more than volume, that steel sometimes whispers. And though the army would give her new missions, new medals, and new titles, one truth remained. They could call her Ghost Steel now, but she'd always just be Eliza, the girl they once called Too Soft. Until the day they followed her through fire.